S is Sight for Dutch.
Hey everybody, Doug here, back at you with another edition of your PA Dutch Minute. A while ago, we did a video on Pennsylvania Dutch trivia facts out of the 1700s. That was a really interesting video, I thought. If you didn't see it, go back and check it out. I'll link it in the show notes down below. And I said at that time, I want to bring you guys also an edition based on the 1800s, and that's what today is. I came up with 4 trivia facts about Pennsylvania Dutch related things, specifically from the 1800s, that I want to talk to you guys about today. Maybe it's things you already know, maybe it's things you don't know, but things you can share with people. There's a lot of really cool things that happen, throughout our history. When we looked at the 1700s, that was our real, the foundations of the Pennsylvania Dutch in America. A lot of them came during the 1700s, started to establish themselves. By the time we get to the 1800s, now we're a couple generations here for a lot of families. We've established ourselves and we have started to grow and develop and really put our fingerprint, our footprint on America's story. So let's look at some facts from the 1800s, Pennsylvania Dutch style, though, boys and girls, Jungs und Mädels, Buben und Mädel. Here we go. The first thing I decided to talk about was famously the story of Susanna Cox. If you are not familiar with this story, let me quick tell you. Trivia fact number 1. On the 10th of June, 1809, Susanna Cox, who was a maid on a Pennsylvania Dutch farm down in the Ole Valley, was on trial, found guilty, and hanged in the city of Reading. You might say to yourself, well, what's the big story about that? Well, there's a lot of background to this story that a lot of people don't realize. And there's a lot of things about this story that we don't know if we'll ever really find out the truth. The story goes that Susanna, who was not married, a maid, young girl, had a baby in February, the 17th of February, 1809. And the baby was discovered dead. Now, she was charged with murdering the infant. Her response was that it was stillborn. And since she was not married, of course, think it's the 1809, that of course having a child out of wedlock, that had some serious social consequences for her. So we don't know for sure. She claims that it was stillborn. The Commonwealth of Pennsylvania argued that she murdered it. She was put on trial, taken to Reading, put on trial. And herein is another problem with this story. Susanna didn't speak very much English at all. Of course, the entire trial and her lawyers all spoke English, and no one really translated anything of the trial and examination, cross-examination, all that stuff into Pennsylvania Dutch for her. So how much did she truly understand was being said about her? How much did she understand the court was saying? We don't know. In any event, she was found guilty and given the death penalty, and on the 10th of June, 1809, she was hanged. She was later buried in an unmarked grave, so we do not know where she's buried, sadly. And to this day, we still don't know the truth. The state would argue that it was murder. She would also go on to be the very last woman hung in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Supposedly thousands and thousands of people showed out for her hanging in Reading. There's a lot of history around this story. Soon after her death, there were ballads written about her, the story of Susanna Cox. Here I have a copy of one of the ones that had been translated in English. Some of them were done in Pennsylvania Dutch. There have been some modern day interpretations of these written as well. The story lives on. Every year at the Kutztown Folk Festival, you can learn more about the hanging of Susanna Cox, where they tell her story year after year. But a really interesting side note in history and a trivia fact from the 1800s for the Pennsylvania Dutch. Here's a second one I have for you. Did you know that there were quite a lot of, oops, I went too far. Did you know that there were quite a lot of Pennsylvania Dutch soldiers that fought in the Civil War? Makes sense, right? I'm going to focus on soldiers that fought for the Union, but little known fact, or maybe not little known, but maybe among a lot of my viewers don't know this, but there were a lot of Pennsylvania Dutch that in the 1700s and early 1800s moved from southeastern Pennsylvania down into the Shenandoah Valley of Virginia and into other parts of Appalachia. And they were still speaking Pennsylvania Dutch and had a lot of those Pennsylvania Dutch traditions at the time of the Civil War. And there were Pennsylvania Dutch speaking soldiers that fought on the side of the Confederacy as well. However, the majority, of course, were fighting for the Union. I highlight the 153rd Regiment of the Pennsylvania Infantry. They were a regiment under the command of Colonel Charles Glantz, founded in Easton. Almost 100% of this regiment were Pennsylvania Dutch boys. Pennsylvania Dutch speakers, Pennsylvania Dutch kids. They were kids, really. And they were mustered in 1862. They had about a year worth of service before the regiment was then disbanded. But in that year's time, they saw major fighting at the battles of Chancellorsville and Gettysburg back here in Pennsylvania. Those were two major conflicts where this group saw heavy fighting. They weren't the only group. The 47th Pennsylvania also had a really high concentration of Pennsylvania Dutch, as did the 88th Pennsylvania. There were quite a lot, because we got to remember these regiments were formed geographically and pulled from, geographic regions were used to bring these boys off the farms. So, if you had a Pennsylvania Dutch region, which of course we had, and you were pulling boys from that area, you were getting a lot of Pennsylvania Dutch speaking boys and a lot of Pennsylvania Dutch boys. I have included, this is the monument for the 153rd. There's a couple monuments on various battlefields for them. This is just one of them. They have one at Gettysburg as well that you can check out if you ever go to the battlefield, as well as many other Pennsylvania Dutch regiments. If you want to learn more about the Pennsylvania Dutch in the Civil War, I'd recommend the book Damn Dutch, which is all about the Pennsylvania Dutch at the Battle of Gettysburg by David Voluska. It's a good book. You got a sneak peek on this. But did you know that, of course, the famous chocolatier Milton S. Hershey was born in the 1800s, the 13th of September, 1857, in Derry Township, to be exact? He was the son of Pennsylvania Dutch parents. He grew up speaking Pennsylvania Dutch in their Mennonite farmhouse there in Derry Township. And, of course, famously in 1900, he would go on to create the Hershey Chocolate Company and become famous, right? And his legacy lives on in Hershey chocolate today. And our last fact, or trivia fact for the 1800s, did you know that in the 1800s, we would see the publication of the very first book in Pennsylvania Dutch, and that would be Harbaugh's Harfe, which translates into Harbaugh's Harp. The book is a collection of poems by the famous poet Henry Harbaugh. It was the very first book that we know of published in Pennsylvania Dutch. It was a collection of poems that he wrote, all the poems he wrote. And there's a really famous Pennsylvania Dutch poem that's called Das Alte Schulhaus an der Creek, which translates into the old schoolhouse on the creek. This is one that, like, if you've ever read any Pennsylvania Dutch literature or poetry, this is one that almost everybody knows. And this book is still out there. You can get copies of this book online. There have been reprinted editions, and there are still original, first run editions out there too. But this would be the very first one. It wouldn't be the last one. After Harbaugh's Harfe, many other books would then be published in Pennsylvania Dutch, like Boonestiel, another really famous early book, but that would be in the 1900s when that came out. But this was the granddaddy of them all, the very first, Harbaugh's Harfe. Maybe you have one of these in your house. Maybe your grandparents had a copy of it. It was a really well-distributed book throughout Pennsylvania Dutch country. So there's some PA Dutch facts for you, specifically from the 1800s. Hopefully you learned something from this, or it may pique your interest to want to learn some more things about these facts that I told you about. I could have picked more, but I went with these four because these are four that I really find enjoyable and interesting, I guess. Hey, you want to get your own PA Dutch swag? Check out our Zazzle shop, zazzle.com/PA Dutch stuff. We are constantly adding new stuff to that website, new stuff, I guess I should say. And remember that a lot of the stuff is advertised as t-shirts, but you can get these images on anything, whether it is a t-shirt, a sweatshirt, but you can also get magnets and stickers and it's like 1,000 different things. So if you're interested, you need a birthday gift, or some other kind of gift is coming up, it's something you need, check out, or just something for yourself, check out our shop at zazzle.com/PA Dutch stuff. If you would like to support us and what we do here at the channel, you can buy me a coffee. Feel free, buymeacoffee.com/Doug Mainford. All money that is donated through the Buy Me a Coffee campaign goes to the upkeep of the channel. And if you haven't subscribed and hit that notification bell and all those things that all the YouTubers today say for you to do, please do. And in the meantime, also, if you already are a subscriber, thank you. And please share our videos on your social media feeds. You can also find us on Facebook and on X and on Instagram. Just look for @PA-Dutch101 and you'll find quality Pennsylvania Dutch content on the interwebs and on the deep world that is social media. Till next time, dear friends, keep practicing your Pennsylvania Dutch. Stay curious. Bleib unauffällig, as we say. That's why I love to study history, because I got all these questions and then we get to see these cool stories like what we talked about today. And look in the future, hopefully we'll have a 1900s era edition of Pennsylvania Dutch trivia facts down the pipe here at some point in the future. But till then, dear friends, keep practicing your Pennsylvania Dutch. Schwätz Deutsch and Mach's gut.
Mach's gut, and don't forget to like and subscribe. And schlock that notification bell.